Okay, picture this. It's early 2000s in Tokyo, Japan. The economy is bouncing back. Flip phones are the status symbol, and nightclubs are buzzing with college students that just wanna blow off some steam after exams. Seems like a fun, harmless scene, right? But what if I told you that behind the bass drops and party lights, there was a college club, not your usual anime or hiking club in a college. There was another college club that was actually the front of one of the most disturbing essay rings Japan have ever seen in history. Yeah, welcome to the super free incident in Japan. It kinda sounds like a discounted cell phone plan. But what this group did was anything but free, and definitely not super like the name says. Today we're going deep into a case that shook Japan's trust in universities, its law enforcement, and even its cultural silence in sexual offenses. Buckle up, because what you're about to hear is shocking, infuriating, and very, very real. And if you thought Japan was all about politeness, sushi, and sakura blossoms, well, you might be a little wrong, because this story might kinda change how you think about it. So welcome back to another Beauty and Crime Sunday with me, in which I do my skincare while I talk about the disturbing cases I found this week. So if you like skincare and you like creepy cases like this, please subscribe. And now let's actually start with the story. Let's talk about an elite student group, technically, that turned nightlife into a hunting ground, and how the system nearly let them go without any consequences. You know those student clubs in college, right? The ones where people bond over film, different hobbies that they have, hiking, sports, whatever you want. Yeah, most of them are harmless fun, right? A place to make friends, kill time, maybe add something to your shiny resume. But what if I told you that there were some clubs that kinda operated under the radar? Not for a chess game or karaoke nights, but for something way more sinister than that. I'm talking about the so-called rape clubs. Yes, you heard that right. These groups, they don't technically say, oh, come into this club to commit some crimes together. They kinda wear masks, let's say. Not literal ones, but social ones. On paper, they're just another student organization, normal. Maybe they throw big parties, maybe they look cool, popular, even aspirational. But beneath the surface, some of these groups, like the one we're talking about today, were preying on different women. Party invites, they became traps. Drinks became weapons. And what followed that was pure horror. Enter Super Free. Sounds harmless, right? Kinda sounds like a young trouble group. But this club wasn't really giving weekend getaways. It was founded all the way back in 1982 at Waseda University, one of the most prestigious universities in Japan. Yeah, that Waseda, the same school that churns out CEOs, lawmakers, and cultural icons in Japan. And while its public image was technically spotless, the reality hiding in its nightlife scene was anything but that. And I feel like we all heard about different universities that are like super prestigious and everything. The creepy things usually happen in those universities. And for years, Super Free flew under the radar as a student social circle. They threw huge parties. They were known for their connections, their influence, and their nightlife, especially in Tokyo. But in 1995, things took a sharp turn. A second-year student named Skin1004 Shinichiro Wada stepped in as the club's new leader, and that's when the club technically started to mutate into something more creepy. Wada did not want just parties. He wanted power, he wanted control, and under his leadership, Super Free became a front for something unthinkable. Reports later describe how women, often fellow students, were tricked, intoxicated, and gang assaulted in these so-called events. Some say that the club might have started out like any other, but under Wada it evolved into something much darker, something organized, deliberate, and terrifying. And yet for years nobody really noticed nothing weird happening in those events. And also for years nobody actually blew the whistle. Why? Well, that's the question we need to answer right now. Coming up, why did Super Free get away with it for so long? And why Japan's culture of silence made it nearly impossible for victims to speak out about it. Let's hit pause and rewind a little bit. Because to understand how Super Free spiraled into something so grotesque, we need to really look at the man who made it happen. Meet Shinichiro Wada. At first glance, just another ambitious college student, chasing prestige. His dream university was technically the University of Tokyo, Japan's equivalent to Harvard in the US. But he didn't really make the cut in '93. That didn't really make him stop. Driven, maybe a little too obsessed. Wada pivoted and got accepted into the Waseda University, still one of the most prestigious schools in Japan. But for him, being good was not good enough. He wanted power, recognition, and control. He didn't want to be the second, no. And then he technically found his aspiration, let's say. Tucked inside the chaotic student life was the Waseda Club, casual under the radar, known as Super Free. Originally, it was just a social circle. Music, parties, flirting, nothing too wild. Or so it seemed. But when Wada joined, everything began to change. He climbed the social ladder first, charismatic, calculating, and very well liked. And when he took the reins of the club, it stopped being a student party club and became something far more disturbing. Under his leadership, Super Free actually expanded. We're talking 5 branches across Tokyo. Members just not from Waseda, but other top-tier universities were joining. They had an Keio Meiji Sophia. This wasn't some frat house operation. They had an actual office in Tokyo, over 30 members, and an actual income of 10 million yen, around 70,000, which for a university club that's very okay. Let's that sinking. A student club was making tens of thousands of dollars, not from merchandise, not from tutoring, but from throwing parties. That's kind of what every university student kind of dreams of, right? But this club, however, why would you think that they're making so much money? Oh, it was a setup for sexual assaults to happen. Wada also did not want just the money, no, he wanted women. That was his real goal. And not just any students. He wanted women, especially young students from outside Tokyo, women from smaller universities, women dazzled by the city lights and lured in by the fantasy of Tokyo's elite lifestyle. A very good strategy if you think about it. But these women were invited to raves. Well-dressed students, handed tickets by people who seemed friendly and and very well-dressed students. But they didn't really know that behind that music and those very pretty lights, predators were waiting. According to Ryuichi Taigo, an investigator who looked into the Super Free scandal, many of these victims actually believed that these parties were their golden ticket into high Tokyo society. In court, some women, perhaps probably manipulated, perhaps others a little bit broken, even claimed they consented to some of the stuff that actually happened. A few actually became romantically involved with some of the abusers. And that right there is the psychological rot at the heart of this case. It wasn't really just about brutal force. It was about the deception, coercion, and control wrapped in the glitter of Tokyo nightlife. But now we will uncover the twisted methods Wada and his crew used to keep their crimes under wraps, and how the cultural silence around sexual assault in Japan let them keep operating their terrible club. We have talked about the club, we have talked about Wada, but what we are missing, it's the darkest part of this story. The way Super Free operated wasn't really chaotic, it was methodical. Their assaults followed a very sick pattern that had been rehearsed and perfected over time. First, the party, loud music, flashing lights, alcohol everywhere, girls, often new to Tokyo, very trusting and very excited. They were singled out. Members would actually encourage them to keep drinking, then keep going until they could barely stand by themselves. Then they were taken to bathrooms, alleyways, stairwells, hotels, even Wada's own apartment. There, behind closed door, the unimaginable happened. Wada didn't just allow these assaults to happen. He technically promoted them. To him, it was a weird way of team building, I guess. A way of members to bond and prove loyalty to the group. If someone actually refused to participate, Wada made it clear they weren't really part of the club. This wasn't a one-off horror story. It was a system, a criminal structure where new members were groomed to become perpetrators, and victims were silenced with shame, fear, and also blackmail. Sometimes it was vodka so strong that it barely tasted like alcohol. Sometimes it was drugs, anything to take control, to reduce the resistance, to make someone a victim. And the worst part, many of the attacks were actually photographed. These weren't just trophies, they were weapons that they could use after to blackmail these girls and silence them. One member called Kishimoto was reportedly the one who kept the victims calm, or at least quiet. While the assault happens, his job? To make sure their screams never made it past the door. The estimated numbers are kinda hard to verify. They say the estimated victims were more than 100 people, and the estimated assailants were around 50 plus. But the crimes were rarely reported. Some members claim they only did it once. Others confessed to 15 separate assaults. But the truth, we may never know the actual truth. How many lives were shattered because of this weird club? The cracks finally started to show that Wada and two other members of the club assaulted a girl, a 19-year-old woman, at her home. April 2003. An 18-year-old girl was lured into his apartment. May 18, 2003, another college student, a 20-year-old woman, assaulted also in the same area. 3 confirmed cases, 3 women who stood up and came forward. And for those 3 incidents by itself, Wada and 13 others were arrested. But let us again, 3 arrests over 100 women were likely assaulted. Why? Because most of the victims, even the bravest one that actually came forward, begged for their complaint not to be formally filed. Some feared retaliation. Others believed that just the ones that were behind bars were just the tip of the iceberg. Wada was sentenced to 14 years in jail. Others received sentences from 28 months to 10 years. Was it really justice though? That is still debated today. Wada's sentence wasn't even the highest allowed by law. Why? Because his father stepped in, offering financial compensation to the victims listed in the 3 official cases. But what about the rest? This wasn't just a scandal, it was something much deeper. A culture that often buries its darkest truth to save prestigious people. You would think after everything, the stories, the evidence, the victims, that this man would at least have the decency to accept the punishment. But no, they had the audacity to appeal. In 2003, Shinichiro Wada challenged his conviction as if somehow he had been wronged, but the Tokyo High Court wasn't buying it. In June 2005, they rejected the appeal and upheld the original sentencing. Wada and the rest did not stop there, no. They took the case all the way up to the Supreme Court in Japan. But again, thankfully, it was a hard no. But in November 2005, the highest court in the land shut the door to their last hope. But justice, it didn't really feel complete. Although his official sentencing lasted until 2017, sources say that Wada was actually released even earlier than that. Today he's reportedly living in Osaka under a new name, new identity, fresh start. Meanwhile, his victims still live with the trauma that he helped to create. But this case didn't just end up with a court ruling. It caused shockwaves through Japan. It became a turning point in the country's conversations about sexual violence and justice. In response, Japan's legal system was technically forced to look in the mirror. At the time, the minimum sentence for robbery was 5 years. But for sexual assault, just 2. That's right, stealing a wallet was considered more serious than violating a person's body and soul. That led to the introduction of new provisions, including one addressing the gang sexual assault, finally added to the Japan's criminal system. But just when you think that the system may start to get things right, the government showed their ugly side. In June 2003, the Chief Cabinet Secretary Yasuo Fukuda made a comment so disturbing it left reporters speechless. There are women who look like they are saying, "Do it to me." That's what he allegedly said. Blaming women for the assaults committed to them, justifying men's actions by calling them panthers who couldn't help themselves. I mean, what kind of sick mentality is that? Fukuda later claimed his comments were distorted, that he wasn't defending sexual assault. But even entertaining that line of thinking in private, it speaks volumes of the culture of victim blaming that made Super Free possible in the first place, so. And while I was technically digging about this case, the most weird thing appeared and I was like, what is that? I found that, I don't know why, this anime was kind of connected with this case. It was an anime aired in early 90s called, wait for it, The Rape Man. And the actual tagline about this anime? Oh, rape men, righting wrongs through penetration. That's the actual tagline of the anime. The main character also, a so-called superhero who punish women with sexual violence as if it's a form of justice. And this wasn't just an underground thing. It was aired and produced. Aired like it was completely normal. What the actual fuck? And I had to check this because I was like, there is no fucking way this is real. And I had to check, and it says, yes, The Rape Man aired in 1993. And what it says, the actual introduction of this is, a mild-mannered high school teacher moonlights as a masked vigilante who uses rape to exact revenge on women who have committed crimes or broken societal taboos. And I feel like, now that I read this, by the way, the grade that this has is a 4.9 out of 10. I wonder why. And now, after this, I'm gonna try to find an episode of this. Try to watch it. I'm really very curious about this anime. It's my way of doing research, okay? Don't judge. I just need to know now. But how can society says it values women when this kind of narrative, it is so normalized that it becomes entertaining to them? The Super Free incident wasn't really an outlier. It was a symptom of something festering underneath the surface, a toxic view of gender, power, and violence that was far more accepted than anyone wanted to actually admit. Also, what it came kind of connected with this story was some theories that came with the story. Some people said that after World War II, many Japanese men developed a deep-seated inferiority complex, one seen as the dominant figures at work, at home, even in relationships. That old word masculinity took a hit for them. And in the vacuum of shame and humiliation, some men perceived to take control and reclaim their perceived loss of power. Not through healing like a normal person would, not through growth, but through control, objectification, and in the darkest cases, through violence. And when that desire is fed by the media, when the lines of fiction and fantasy blur into something more insidious, you get a culture that rape is not just tolerated, but it became a punchline. Now, if you're watching this from Japan, or anywhere really, I want to really hear from you, because these aren't just Japanese problems. These are really global problems. What's happening here reflects broader patterns of toxic masculinity, media normalization, and legal systems that don't actually fully protect women. Even after Super Free happened, the incidents did not really stop there. In 2014, a dozen unconscious girls were found lying across the streets of Shinjuku, their skirts up, their dignity stripped. These weren't just drunk partygoers. Witnesses said that the girls were actually completely limp. Some even had soiled themselves. The implication? They were drugged, possibly with muscle relaxants, possibly also with something worse. These were students that just wanted to enjoy their day of tennis with members of the Meiji University Tennis Club. And what did Meiji University say? They issued a very short statement. We will ensure this never happens again. That's it. No follow-up to that statement. No investigation released to the public. Just a promise and silence. I'm not here really to technically tell Japan how to solve their problems. Every country has their different problems. This isn't really just about Japan. This is about everywhere. Any society that really shrugs at assault, that really blames the victims, that lets perpetrators walk with just a slap on the wrist, those systems are really failing. So to the victims, known or unknown, my heart goes out to you, really. I wish I could really do more than just tell the stories, but maybe, just maybe talking about these cases, somewhere out there will listen, someone that actually has power and cares about the situations and act on them. To everyone watching, stay safe, please. Stay aware and never really stop questioning what hides behind polite smiles, prestigious reputations, and the silence of institutions. I'm not saying don't trust anyone, but just in case, think about it twice. And if you have been affected by sexual assault or know someone that has been affected by it, please seek support. You're not alone. And really, if you think that a lot of people will talk about it, and really don't be scared of talking about these cases or about what happened to you. You shouldn't care about what your neighbors say about it. I want to really give you strength. But well, after this horrible crime, I need a break. Thank you for watching. If you found this video important, please share or think of subscribing to this channel. Not for clicks, but just to make sure that what happened to those women is never forgotten. I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care of yourself and remember, do your skincare, and if you don't end up like a glazed donut at the end of it, you're not doing it right. Bye bye!